Welcome to StoryGrove, where we share screen-free stories for kids without noisy advertisements. We hope you enjoy. Benny and the Desert Creek Mystery. Chapter 1. The Creekside Community. In the heart of a vast, sun-drenched desert, where golden sands stretched as far as the eye could see and rocky outcroppings jutted from the earth like ancient guardians, a small creek trickled through the land like a silver ribbon. It wasn't much, certainly not wide or deep, but to the creatures who lived nearby, it was the lifeblood of their community. Right beside that creek, nestled under the shade of a twisted mesquite tree, lived Benny, a tiny bird with feathers the colour of rust and sapphire. Benny wasn't particularly fast, or strong, or daring, but he was curious enough for 3 birds twice his size. His eyes were always wide with wonder, and his beak often buzzed with questions. Each morning, as the desert yawned awake under the rising sun, Benny would flutter down to the water's edge, dip his toes into the cool stream, and greet the day with a cheerful chirp. And like clockwork, his friends would appear, bringing with them the bustle and laughter of creekside life. Sally the tortoise was usually the first. She was old, so old no one really knew her age, and slow in a way that could make watching paint dry seem like a thrilling event. But she was wise, and always had fresh cactus pads balanced atop her shell, ready to share.
"Morning, Benny,"
she'd say, with a nod so slow it could take an entire sentence to complete.
"Lovely day for sipping, isn't it?"
Then came Jasper the jackrabbit, bounding over rocks with ears flopping wildly. "Hey, Benny! Betcha can't do 3 backflips before breakfast!" "I'm not sure I can even do one," Benny would reply, hopping in a tight circle, wings flapping. "Well, I can do 5, Jasper would shout, only to trip over his own feet and tumble into the creek, sending water splashing everywhere. Morty the beetle would usually be nearby, grumbling under his breath as he rolled mysterious objects across the sand. "Can't a beetle get any peace around here? Splash, splash, splash. Some of us like to keep our shells clean." Benny found Morty endlessly amusing. No one really knew what he was rolling or why, and Morty never explained. Cleo the coyote pup was the quietest of the bunch. She was shy, with fur the colour of driftwood, and eyes sharp enough to spot a beetle sneeze from 20 paces. But she had a gentle way about her, and was always the first to notice when someone was feeling down. Their little community stretched along the creek's edge. Some creatures lived in burrows dug into the sandy banks. Others built nests in the scrubby trees, or hid beneath rocks that offered shade from the relentless sun. Despite the harshness of the desert, life here was good. The creek brought them together. It gave them water, a place to cool their feet, or shells, and most importantly, a reason to gather. On hot days, they told stories. On cooler nights, they watched the stars and argued about which one was the biggest. Benny usually lost those arguments. His guesses were almost always wrong. One particularly fine morning, Benny fluttered down from his nest with a song on his beak. The sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges, and the air was fresh with the scent of blooming desert flowers. As he reached the creek, he noticed Sally already sipping. "Morning, Sally," he chirped. She nodded slowly.
"Morning, dear. The water's especially cool today. Just perfect."
Benny dipped his feet in, letting the gentle current swirl around his toes. The sunlight sparkled on the surface, creating tiny rainbows that danced across the pebbles below. Jasper arrived moments later, already mid-jump.
"Watch out below!"
he shouted, landing with a dramatic splash that soaked everyone within 5 feet. "Jasper!" Morty snapped, wiping water off his shiny back. "Do you mind? Some of us take pride in our polish."
"Sorry, Morty,"
Jasper called, already bouncing off toward a nearby tumbleweed. Cleo padded in quietly, ears twitching. "Any lizards yet?" she asked. Benny laughed. "Not unless Jasper counts." Cleo gave a soft smile. "He does hop like one." As the sun climbed higher, the community grew livelier. There was a game of who can spot the cloud, which ended quickly because, well, there weren't any clouds. Then came Sally's story hour, where she told tales of the Great Desert Flood that supposedly happened when she was a hatchling. Most of the younger animals didn't believe her, but they listened anyway, if only for her dramatic pauses. By midday, the desert heat had settled in, and everyone lounged in the shade. Benny perched on his favourite rock, watching as the sunlight danced on the water. He let out a contented sigh. "Life doesn't get better than this," he said to no one in particular. Morty grunted. "Tell that to my backache." Sally chuckled.
Oh, Morty, you'd complain if the sand was too sandy.
Benny stretched his wings and looked around at his friends. The laughter, the comfort, the peace, it all felt so perfect. But perfection, as Benny was about to learn, doesn't always last. The first sign was subtle. A soft gurgle that should have echoed through the air was missing. Benny tilted his head, listening. The creek was quieter. The cheerful babble of water over stone had faded. He fluttered to the edge, peering down. The water seemed lower, not much, but enough to notice. "Sally, is it just me, or is the creek thinner?" Sally squinted.
Could be. Maybe just the heat.
Jasper bounded over.
I can still do flips in it. Watch me cannonball.
Before anyone could stop him, Jasper leapt into the stream and landed with a thud on the now visible creek bed.
Ouch!
He cried, rubbing his head.
Where's the water?
Morty scurried over, antennae twitching. "I knew it! I knew something was off! It's the end! The end, I tell you!" Cleo approached silently, her nose low to the ground. "It's almost dry," she murmured. "I can smell dust where there used to be water." Panic rippled through the group. Benny flapped nervously, hopping from foot to foot. "This can't be right. The creek's always here. It's always here." But as the sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the desert, the truth became impossible to ignore. The creek had stopped. The lifeline of their community had vanished. Silence fell. Even Jasper had no jokes to offer. Morty sat quietly, his latest treasure forgotten. Cleo gazed upstream, her eyes sharp with worry. Benny felt a knot twist in his chest. He looked at the dry creek bed, then back at his friends. "Where does the creek come from?" he asked aloud. No one answered. Maybe I can find out." All eyes turned to him. Benny, the smallest of them all, the one who couldn't flip or roll or run fast. "It could be dangerous," Cleo said gently. Benny swallowed hard. "But someone has to try." And so, as the stars blinked awake in the darkening sky, Benny made a decision. He would follow the creek bed into the unknown, across the desert, to find out why their water had vanished. Tomorrow his journey would begin. See Chapter 2, The Owl in the Shadows. The desert night is a strange and beautiful thing. Gone were the shimmering heat waves and golden light of day. In their place, a cool hush settled over the sand, and the sky stretched endlessly overhead, studded with more stars than Benny had ever imagined. The air smelled different too, crisp, dry, with a faint scent of mesquite and sage carried by the night breeze. But Benny wasn't thinking about the stars. He was too busy keeping his eyes on the dry, cracked creek bed beneath his feet. The little bird had been walking all day. The sand dunes behind him rolled away like waves, the familiar shapes of home lost somewhere beyond the horizon. His wings felt heavy, and his stomach grumbled. He hadn't seen a drop of water since leaving his community that morning. Still, Benny kept moving. "If I just follow the creek bed far enough," he muttered to himself, "I'll find whatever stopped the water. I have to." But as the last light faded, Benny realized how far from home he really was. Strange shadows shifted between the rocks. Cacti stood like silent sentries. The rustle of unseen creatures echoed through the stillness. Every so often, the wind would whistle, making the tall grasses sway and whisper things Benny couldn't quite hear. He tried to stay brave, but the truth was, Benny had never spent a night alone in the desert. By the time the moon hung high and bright, Benny's feet ached. He paused beneath a spiky ocotillo plant and tucked his head under his wing. "Just a short nap," he murmured, "then I'll keep going." The cool sand felt soft beneath him. He started to drift off, lulled by the rhythmic chirping of distant insects. But something else was awake. High above, perched silently on a rocky ledge, 2 yellow eyes gleamed. It was Oscar, an owl large and silent as the night itself. His feathers blended perfectly with the shadows, and his sharp talons dug into the stone beneath him. Oscar had been watching Benny for some time. "What luck," the owl whispered, his voice a low rasp. "A plump little bird, all alone. Much easier than chasing those slippery mice." With a soft flutter of wings, Oscar glided down from his perch, landing soundlessly near the ocotillo. Benny, half asleep, didn't notice at first, but something about the air felt wrong. A sudden hush. The crickets stopped chirping. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Benny's eyes snapped open. Standing just a few feet away, half hidden in the shadows, was the largest owl Benny had ever seen. His eyes gleamed like twin moons, unblinking, sharp. "Well, well," Oscar purred, stepping closer. "What's a little bird like you doing out here all alone?" Benny's heart hammered. He scrambled backward, feathers ruffled. I'm just passing through," Benny stammered, "following the creek, looking for the water." Oscar tilted his head. "Brave of you, but I'm afraid this desert is no place for a bird at night." His talons clicked on the stones as he advanced. Benny thought fast. He couldn't outfly an owl, not in the dark. He couldn't outrun him either. Think, Benny, think. Glancing around, Benny spotted something in the shadows, an old half-buried tumbleweed, dry and brittle, but large enough to hide behind. An idea flickered. Benny took a step backward, eyes wide. "You're right. I probably shouldn't be out here," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "But I'm not alone, you know." Oscar paused. "Oh?" "No," Benny continued quickly. "I'm travelling with a rattlesnake. He's just over there, behind that bush." Oscar squinted, feathers ruffling slightly. "A rattlesnake?" "Oh, yes," Benny nodded, inching closer to the tumbleweed. "Very protective. Doesn't like strangers sneaking up on me." Oscar hesitated, eyeing the shadows. Benny seized his chance. He darted behind the tumbleweed and with a quick flutter, pushed it toward Oscar. The dry branches tumbled noisily, rolling straight at the owl. Startled, Oscar flapped backward, wings spread wide. In the confusion, Benny spotted a narrow crevice between two rocks nearby. Without wasting a second, Benny squeezed through, his small size working to his advantage. Oscar lunged, but the gap was too tight. His beak snapped shut on empty air. Benny, catching his breath, peeked out from the other side of the rocks. He spotted something else nearby, a pile of loose stones balanced precariously. A new idea formed. "Hey, owl," Benny called, voice echoing slightly. "Bet you can't catch me through here." Oscar snarled, frustrated, and moved to circle around the rocks. Benny fluttered up and over the stones, landing beside the loose pile. With careful nudges, he pushed the top rocks free. The stones tumbled down with a clatter, landing right in Oscar's path and trapping one of his wings beneath them. Oscar let out an angry hoot, struggling to free himself. Benny didn't wait. He sprinted across the sand, wings flapping furiously, until the owl's cries faded behind him. When he finally stopped panting, the moon hung lower, casting pale light over the quiet desert. Benny looked back, heart still racing. That was too close, but he was safe. He sat down beneath a large thorny bush, letting his breath steady. Despite the scare, Benny felt something new settle in his chest, a flicker of confidence. He'd outsmarted a hungry owl in the middle of the night, using nothing but his quick thinking and a tumbleweed. "Maybe I'm braver than I thought," he mused. The night stretched on, and Benny kept walking, following the dry creek bed as it twisted between rocks and dunes. Behind him, the owl gave one final frustrated hoot before the desert swallowed the sound. Ahead, the first faint hints of dawn began to glow on the horizon. Benny tucked his wings in and pressed forward. The journey wasn't over yet. Chapter 3. The Rabbit and the Coyote Trick. Benny, the little desert bird, had already survived a long day of travel and a perilous night dodging owls. The first blush of dawn now painted the desert sky in soft hues of pink and gold. The desert, which had seemed so dark and dangerous just hours before, now sparkled with light and promise. Shadows stretched long, and the cool breeze smelled of sage and dry earth. Benny shook the dust from his wings and continued along the cracked, dry creek bed. His mission still weighed heavily on his heart. The water had stopped flowing back home, leaving his friends without their lifeline. He had to find the cause. As he travelled deeper into the desert, strange rock formations rose around him like ancient sculptures. Cacti reached up like green giants, their shadows dancing across the sand. Benny kept his eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of where the water might have gone. Hours passed, the sun climbed higher and the desert heat shimmered once more. Benny paused under the sparse shade of a boulder to catch his breath and listen. That's when he heard it, a faint rustling noise followed by urgent whispers. Curious as ever, Benny crept toward the sound, hopping lightly between the rocks. He peered over a ridge and froze, and down below, in a narrow gully surrounded by thorny brush, a small rabbit quivered. Her white fur was dusty, her ears drooped, and her wide eyes darted nervously from side to side. Around her, 4 lanky, scruffy coyotes circled, grinning wickedly, their tails flicking.
Looks like breakfast hopped right to us.
One coyote growled, licking his chops. The rabbit trembled, her little nose twitching. Benny's heart clenched. He didn't know the rabbit, but it didn't matter. She was alone and helpless, just like he had been the night before with the owl. He had to do something. But what? He couldn't scare off coyotes by flapping at them, and flying down to peck them would only get him snapped up next. Benny crouched behind the rock, thinking fast. His eyes scanned the landscape. An idea sparked. Nearby, the dry creek bed twisted past a cluster of tall, hollow reeds. Further along, a pile of tumbleweeds rested, tangled together. He noticed a few sharp rocks perched precariously above the gully on the ridge. Benny grinned. He had a plan. He zipped over to the reeds and tugged several loose, carrying them back to the ridge. Then, he gathered dry twigs and small stones, working quickly but quietly. The coyotes below hadn't noticed. They were too busy taunting the rabbit, who cowered in the center of their circle.
What's the rush, little bunny?
One teased.
We've got all day.
Benny positioned the reeds and twigs into a pile behind a large rock, arranging the stones carefully. Next, he flew over to the tangled tumbleweeds, nudging them into a loose stack near the edge of the ridge. Finally, he fluttered back to a higher perch and called down, trying to sound as bold as possible. "Hey, coyotes!" he squawked. The coyotes paused, heads snapping up. "Who said that?" one snarled. Benny puffed out his chest. "You'd better leave that rabbit alone. There's a giant desert spirit watching, and he doesn't like bullies." The coyotes exchanged confused glances. "Desert spirit? What nonsense is this?" Another coyote sneered. Benny flapped over to the reeds and blew hard. The hollow reeds let out an eerie, whistling sound that echoed through the gully. The coyote stiffened, ears twitching. "What was that?" one whispered. Without waiting, Benny shoved the loose rocks, sending them tumbling down the ridge with a loud rumble. Sand and pebbles scattered everywhere. "It's the spirit!" Benny shouted. "He's angry!" To complete the act, Benny gave the tumbleweeds a good push. They tumbled down the ridge, bouncing and rolling, adding to the chaos. The coyotes yelped, dodging rocks and tumbleweeds. "Hi, I don't see any spirit!" one coyote barked, looking panicked. Benny swooped lower, darting through the reeds to make the eerie sound again, then darted back out of sight. The coyotes were now thoroughly spooked, glancing wildly around. One of them whimpered, "Maybe it's cursed! Let's get out of here!" Without further debate, the pack scattered, tails between their legs kicking up dust as they bolted into the desert. Benny fluttered down to the gully, where the rabbit still sat frozen, wide-eyed. "It's okay now," Benny said gently, landing beside her. "They're gone." The rabbit blinked, then took a shaky breath. "Thank you," she stammered. I thought I was done for." Benny smiled. "I'm Benny. What's your name?" "Rosie," she replied softly. "Well, Rosie, it looks like you had a rough morning," Benny said. "Are you okay to hop along?" She nodded. "I think so. Where are you headed?" Benny glanced at the creek bed. "I'm following the dry stream, trying to find out why the water stopped back home." Rosie looked up, ears perked. "Mind if I come along? Might be safer together." Benny grinned. "I'd like that. 2 heads are better than 1, especially with coyotes around." Together, the little bird and the rabbit set off side by side, leaving behind the gully and its tumbleweeds. The sun was climbing higher, the desert stretching ahead, but Benny felt lighter. He had outsmarted danger once again and gained a friend in the process. The journey wasn't over yet, but Benny felt ready for whatever came next. Chapter 4: The Tree and the Returning Waters. Benny the desert bird and Rosie the rabbit travelled side by side beneath the shimmering sun, their shadows stretching long over the dry creek bed. The desert around them was quiet but alive, every rock and cactus seeming to lean in, listening to their footsteps. It had been days since Benny had left his cosy home by the creek. He had faced dangers he never imagined, a cunning owl, a pack of hungry coyotes. But with each challenge, his determination had grown stronger. Now, with Rosie by his side, his hope flickered bright once again. The creek bed wound its way through sandstone cliffs over dry pebbles and past thorny brush. Occasionally, Rosie would pause to nibble on a patch of scrub grass, while Benny scanned the horizon for any sign of what had stopped the water. "Funny how something as small as a missing creek can feel like such a big problem," Rosie mused, hopping over a cluster of rocks. Benny nodded. "It keeps everyone in our community going. Without it, everything changes." As the sun dipped lower, casting long golden shadows, they came upon a bend in the creek where the banks grew steep and the earth darker. The air smelled fresher here, as though water had passed by not long ago. Suddenly Rosie halted, ears twitching. "Do you hear that?" she asked. Benny listened closely. A faint, muffled sound, almost like gurgling water, reached his ears. Excited, he flapped up onto a nearby rock for a better view. And there it was. Around the next curve, a large tree had fallen across the creek bed. Its thick trunk lay like a barrier, and behind it, water pooled sluggishly. But that wasn't all. Further upstream, Benny noticed something odd. The water wasn't flowing toward them at all. Instead, it trickled away into a smaller side channel, veering off into the desert. Benny's eyes widened. "That's it! The tree fell and blocked the creek. The water's been rerouted." Rosie hopped up beside him, her nose twitching. "If we can clear the blockage, maybe the water will come back." Determined, they approached the fallen tree. It was massive, its roots gnarled and tangled. The thick trunk stretched across the dry bed like a sleeping giant. Benny gave the tree a push with his wings. It didn't budge. Rosie braced her paws against it and shoved. The trunk didn't even wiggle. Benny frowned. "It's too heavy. Even if we had everyone from the creek, I'm not sure we could move it." Rosie sat back thinking. "Maybe we don't have to move the whole tree," she said slowly. "What if we could let the water through another way?" Benny tilted his head. "Like digging?" Rosie nodded, already hopping to the edge of the bank. She began scraping at the soft earth near the base of the tree, sending small clumps of dirt flying. "If I can dig a path around the trunk," she explained, "maybe the water will follow." Benny watched her work, then fluttered to help, using his beak to loosen pebbles and roots. Minutes turned to hours as they dug, sweat beading beneath their fur and feathers. Rosie worked tirelessly, her strong paws scraping deeper and deeper. Benny cleared rocks, dragging them away bit by bit. As the hole widened, a tiny trickle of water began to seep through the loosened soil. Benny's heart skipped. "It's working!" Encouraged, Rosie dug faster, widening the trench. The trickle grew to a small stream, and soon, water poured around the tree's base, bubbling with newfound energy. The current picked up speed, eroding the loosened soil, carving a deeper path. Benny and Rosie stood back as the flow widened, rushing past their feet, reclaiming the old channel. The sound of flowing water filled the air once more. "We did it!" Benny cheered, his wings fluttering in excitement. Rosie grinned, shaking mud from her paws. "Let's follow it back!" Together, they hurried downstream, keeping pace with the returning creek. As they neared the familiar bend, Benny felt his chest swell. The closer they came to home, the louder the water sang, and then, rounding the final corner, Benny saw it. The creek flowed freely once again, sparkling under the afternoon sun. His friends were gathered at the banks, staring in wonder as the water splashed and danced where dry stones had sat only days before. Sally the tortoise, Morty the beetle, Jasper the jackrabbit, and Cleo the coyote pup all turned as Benny and Rosie approached.
"Benny!"
Jasper shouted, leaping into the air. "You did it!" Cleo barked, her tail wagging. Sally smiled her slow, steady smile.
"Welcome home, hero."
Benny blushed, but Rosie nudged him proudly. "Couldn't have done it without Rosie," Benny said. The creekside erupted into cheers and laughter. Soon Jasper was splashing through the water, doing flips. Morty rolled shiny pebbles downstream, muttering happily. Cleo chased dragonflies, while Sally nibbled her favourite cactus snacks. Benny perched on his favourite rock, letting the cool water lap at his feet.
Swim party!
Jasper declared, leaping into the deepest pool. Everyone joined in, splashing and playing under the warm desert sun. As the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the restored creek, Benny looked around at his friends. The laughter, the water, the joy, everything felt just right. He had left home small and unsure, but returned with courage he never knew he had. The desert breeze whispered through the mesquite trees, carrying with it the sound of happy voices. Life was perfect. Thanks for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it and feel calm and cozy. If you'd like more screen-free, ad-free and wholesome stories, don't forget to follow our channel. Or hop on over to our YouTube channel for even more wholesome screen-free tales. See you next time.